The most common piece of advice given to entrepreneurs might also be the most dangerous. 2 words, just start. Today in the podcast, I want to break down why that is both the best advice that anyone could have ever given you and why it could also be the most dangerous words ever said to you. Welcome back to the Family First Entrepreneur Podcast. I'm your host, Heather Blake. So the other day, I see this thumbnail on YouTube and the words just start on it. And in my head, I immediately went, wow, that is the best advice and the worst advice. And I've said this before, but within very specific context. I want to take a look at both sides of this so you can decide whether or not you feel the same and how you need to listen to this advice. I will be reframing it, but first let's talk about why this is the best advice. I've said this before, perfectionism is procrastination. When we are trying to get everything perfect, we are really procrastinating because we need to take action to get more clarity. And when we are trying to reach for perfection without taking any action, we are stuck. And so for that, we need to just start. One of my mentors always called procrastinating, right? You think you need to learn everything, and that's a form of procrastination. So sometimes it's we need to get everything perfect. Sometimes it's we need to learn everything. Sometimes it's we need to do this, we need to do that. And those are all forms of procrastination. And in that case, just start. That's great advice. We also need to have market feedback, right? So if we are trying to do something, and I've heard stories where people take a year to 5 years to actually build out a course or a product. Say it's 12 modules with 5 lessons in each module, and it took you 3 years to build this out. You went to the process of building all of that without feedback, and you should have just started. Okay. Mic position and everything might have changed because I literally just had to stop filming for my 2 teens that just got home from school. All right, so back to why start is good. Another thing, so when you just start, you start building momentum, and momentum is a habit. So, and once you establish a habit, then it's easier to keep doing things. But if you don't start, then you just don't start. And you have to build that momentum. So just starting is great advice in that case because it stops you from overthinking or being afraid, and you just start and you start building the momentum. Once you see some movement, it's a lot easier to keep going. You've definitely heard someone say this at some point. Your first version is going to be bad. Your first version is never going to be your best version. Your first version is going to fail. And that's backed by data. But your first version might not be what you keep going with, like your first product, your first offer. It might not be what you end up selling in a year from now. Or it might be the same product, just not that version of it. And if you don't start, you don't get feedback, you're never going to know whether or not you need to adjust or what you need to adjust. So a few years back, I actually had my first iteration of the new business workbook, and I sold it to some friends and to some people I knew on the internet. I sold it to them and I got their feedback. I sold it very, very cheaply, we'll say. I got some feedback, and based off of their feedback, based off of the knowledge that I had gained in that time period, I was able to redo the new business workbook. And now there's so much more value in that workbook than there ever was in the first version of it. And I would have not known that, and I would have not made those changes necessarily if I didn't put it out there to begin with. The last thing I would love to say about just starting being great is sometimes we don't start because we're afraid. That's often why we don't start. We're afraid that we might fail. We're afraid that people might judge us. We're afraid. And that's natural to be afraid. Our caveman selves, the former version of us as cavemen, needed that fear to keep themselves alive. We still need that fear to keep ourselves alive, so we don't walk off the edges of cliffs. But we don't necessarily need fear to keep us alive when it's something like starting a business. Starting a business is not going to end our life. It is something that can get worked through and can get better. And, it's something where we just need to start. We don't have to be afraid. We can just start. So on the opposite end of this spectrum, the flip side, this is why I don't like this advice. Just start is bad advice if you are starting without clarity. You're just starting and you're doing busy work because you don't have a clear direction. You have no defined customer, no defined niche, no offer. You're just getting the ball rolling. I've seen so many people, and I guess in a way I kind of did this with this business. This is my first online focused business. I do in person, at my local community college and things like that. But this business is mostly online. And this was my first time doing this. And I kind of didn't realize that some of what I did with my local businesses, I needed to do with this business. And I started listening to the advice of, just starting an Instagram channel and start posting. But I had no clear direction. So if you don't have that clear direction, you're going to just end up having to keep pivoting your business. Oh, this isn't working. That isn't working. Oh, this isn't working. This isn't working. You feel like a pinball in a machine going from spot to business to idea. And it's because you just started without clarity. Another reason I don't like this is because just starting can normalize chaos instead of clarity, where you're not clear. You don't have defined goals. You don't have a defined niche, whatever it is that you're not clear on these things. And so you're in this constant state of chaos and busy work and pivoting and all this, and it's normalizing chaos. There is no structure. And that becomes your normal. And if that becomes your normal, you are doomed to fail. Some things, and this is coming from someone who struggles kind of with this stuff a bit. I have, ADHD and things like that. And you absolutely need to have frameworks for certain things. There are certain things that just need to have a framework. You need to know how to log certain things, like maybe your finances, how to keep track of things. You need to make sure that you have a framework for how you're going to present yourself online, your values, all these things. You need to know these things. You need to have a framework for your offer. You can't just create something out of thin air. You need frameworks, you need some systems, and just starting can keep you from doing those, from keeping you from putting those in place. Just starting can also set someone up, a founder, a starter, an entrepreneur, however you want to look at it. It can set you up to grind continuously and completely in the wrong direction. Right? You're just starting. You don't have that clarity. You're grinding because you do not have a clear direction. So you're just trying everything and throwing all these tacks at the wall. But if you just step back for a moment to get clarity, you could be throwing darts at a dartboard. See, visualize that. This is a visualization that I love. Throwing a handful of tacks at a wall. Most tacks are just going to bounce off. You're lucky if you get one or two tacks to stick. But darts at a dartboard, even if you don't hit bullseye, your darts are more likely to stick. So just starting is those tacks being thrown at the wall. So now I want to take a moment and reframe this so you can think about just starting in the proper manner. Because like I said, I've used just start in certain contexts where it's that fear that's holding you back. So the better way of looking at just start is just start with enough. Enough clarity, enough structure, enough courage. You just need enough of these things to start moving. So enough is, your customer, your problem that you can solve for somebody, and what your offer is, or the idea of your offer that you can start getting information on, getting feedback on. That's when you can start. When you're ready to get feedback on that offer, you know who your customer is, you know what skill or knowledge you have that you can offer to somebody, and have an idea, at least a general idea of what that offer can be. That's when you start. You don't need to have everything built out. You don't need to be a guru. You don't need to have a doctorate. You can just start there because you have enough to start, just enough. I want you to think of just start as an antidote to perfection, right? No, I don't need to be perfect. I could just start. That's fine. But I do not want you to use it as a substitute for clarity and thinking. That's where you need to think, I need just enough to start. Your goal is to have an informed first step, not a blind leap or endless planning, right? Those are the two opposite ends of the spectrum. The person that is in procrastination learning or perfectionism, or the person that leaps blindly. You need to be in the middle with just enough to start. And you build from there. So I love to give homework on the Family First Entrepreneur podcast. And today, this episode is no different. I want you to ask yourself this important question. Am I waiting because I need more clarity? Or am I waiting because I'm scared to start? If you're waiting for more clarity, then I just told you what you need to start. Just enough. Your niche, your skills that you're going to use, how you're going to turn that into an offer, the basic idea of the offer, and then you start. If you're just holding off because you're scared and not because you don't have that foundation already, then you just need to start because you already have enough. Okay? Am I waiting because I need more clarity or because I am scared? I'll see you next week on the Family First Entrepreneur podcast.